Welcome to another Nerdporial chat. This is not going to be my usual chat where I'm jokey and I'm identify as something else. I'm just Brian today, for the dignity of especially with the stuff that's going on and how people are feeling about this new Dahmer series that came out on Netflix, and how some of the families feel like it reopened some of the old wounds. So I just wanted to be as respectful as I possibly could in this instance. But once again, welcome. Thank you for being here. I know Nosferatu, I see you in the chat. This is an unusual stream. I think it's my first time ever talking true crime, and with me for the first time on my channel, I have the legendary Sno Dub. What's up, Sno Dub? How you doing?
Oh, I don't know about legendary, but yes, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man. It's great topic and great show, and I really can't wait to get into it with you because I'm quite a connoisseur of horror and scary stuff, and this is one of those series that I feel is top notch. Really and really got put on a higher shelf compared to a lot of other stuff that's coming out nowadays.
Yeah, I was curious myself, like just because I mean I've read up a lot on Gacy. I've read up a lot on Charles Manson and just typical stuff. Like, yeah, I'm also into horror and I'm also into. I mean, sometimes I'm into true crime. There's a lot of crime, mainly really grisly. I mean, some of the more grisly stuff that would give me the heebie-jeebies, like missing people, missing kids, or serial killers and stuff like that. And just for disclaimer, I don't have a favorite serial killer. I don't condone anything that these people have done. These people have destroyed lives. They have destroyed families. They have destroyed friends, and like just the death of a single person affects hundreds of thousands of people across the board. And if and then whoever they're affected, it's a cascade. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I was looking into this series. I saw the series on Netflix. I wasn't sure if I wanted to watch it because of based on what I knew about Dahmer, and I wasn't sure but I didn't know enough about him. So like I didn't know the how he got arrested or how he or the amount of people he killed. I just knew that he all I knew was how he was at the end and how he died and how different he was from Gacy. So I'm just curious, like, what was your history? Like, if you known like you if you watched the news about Dahmer when this was going down, how'd you get into true crime in the first place?
Oh, I've always had a love for um, just I think with these people like these serial killers, um, I'm not exactly what you would call a religious type, so this is the closest thing I think I can find in actuality that's true evil, and the closest thing I could think of to what a devil reincarnate would be, somebody just that has no feelings whatsoever or has completely shut them down in order to do stuff like this. And that part of the mind and um, being tapped into that, just that primal, instinct of just, being a sheer horrific murderer is always interests me. And I think throughout the years, I remember the Dahmer case briefly. I was very young when all that happened, but I do kind of remember it being flashed on the screen and on the tabloids. But it didn't really catch my attention until I was much older, in my 20s and stuff, when I started kind of digging into more like documentaries and stuff like that on who these people were. I think what really tapped me into all of it, like the true crime, like you were saying, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then digging into where that story came from, and that was another killer that was not a serial killer, but just a grotesque cannibal type person like Dahmer, and that was Ed Gein.
Yeah, and Ed Gein not only is, I mean, this is going to sound messed up, and I've said this before, but Ed Gein is the how would I say it? Ed Gein is the father, not the father. Ed Gein is the inspiration of the slasher genre of film. It's so hard to believe that a crazy guy like Ed Gein could be that, but he was, because he not only influenced, or not only did not only did his case inspire Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he also inspired Psycho. And Psycho is, the granddaddy of all the slasher films. I mean, every slasher film wants to be as good as Psycho.
Y-
Heck, that's why they hired Jamie Lee Curtis to play in Halloween, because she was the daughter of
right.
Janet Leigh. So
Yeah, well, the Psycho kind of laid the founding groundwork, and then, of course, the early '80s with Halloween was '70s, but the early '80s with the explosion of the stalker slasher killer movie genre really took hold, and that's when we started to see more and more movies that would base off of reality of all these different whack jobs that are out there. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, Leatherface, Norman Bates, and Buffalo Bill.
I
Yeah,
didn't know
we're all
about Buffalo
inspired.
Bill, but I guess that makes sense. Just being just as crazy as Buffalo Bill was.
Yeah, that was the whole taking the skin and making suits. That was all Ed Gein type stuff.
Yeah, it gets the. I don't, okay, I'm not even going to quote that for humor.
Ed Gein was severely abused. Like, he was extremely abused by his mother, and mentally abused. I mean,
Yeah,
he was basically taught, that his genitalia was evil, and I'm
yeah,
just you could only imagine, how he tried to curb his any type of sexual intuition because of his mother, and it had to manifest itself somehow, and
yeah.
that's why we got such a wild story as Ed Gein, and
Hmm.
he's definitely a true psychopath. Somebody that just were, was not on planet Earth anymore. He was in his own little world. Just like Dahmer. Dahmer, same thing. He went to his own little world after a while, and that's where he lived. And these guys, they think they're untouchable after a while because they get so used to their pattern of just weirdness. Whatever they
Yeah,
get
yeah, I
into.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed Gein actually, I think they brought up Ed Gein in the show, like because they were trying to get Dahmer on Insanity, which is how Ed Gein did not go to prison. He was found insane, if I remember correctly, and so he
Yes.
was he was
Yes, he
in
was.
for years. I forget, but I think he was discharged eventually.
No, he died in the insane asylum,
Oh, he
but
did.
he was in there for the rest of his life, and he
Okay.
actually became very pleasant and kind of a nice guy, I guess. But yeah, he was definitely crazy.
It's ridiculous. But like same with, but yeah, like with me, for instance, I mean, I didn't know much about Dahmer, but the reason why I heard about Dahmer is because Dahmer was like, just like he was the top three. I mean, when you think of, the most popular serial killers in the news and true crime, you always hear Gacy, you always hear Ted Bundy, and you always hear Jeffrey Dahmer. Those three. I mean, there were plenty of others, but those three just had the highest profile. I don't know if it was because of the number of victims or what. I don't quite understand that, but um,
They were all unique in their own way, kind of. With Gacy being the clown and being the very likable person. And then, of course, Dahmer's extremism, and then Ted Bundy was very charming. A lot of people
yeah.
don't realize how charming that guy was, and not only to women but to men as well.
Did,
He'd charm his way into a lot of stuff.
did you see the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie on Netflix?
No, I need to watch that. I heard about it. Heard it was pretty good. Um,
The Zac Efron did just as good did pretty a really good job. Like, I forgot that he was Ted Bundy. Like, just
wow.
how well his performance was. And you think, when you think of, Zac Efron, you think, frat dude, buff frat dude and everything. Well, he wasn't buff frat dude. I mean, he was still buff, but he was just he was playing a character other than what he usually plays. And I
Right.
thought he did a really good job. And I feel the same about Evan Peters, who played Dahmer. Like, Evan Peters creeped the hell out of me. Like,
Evan Peters is. I noticed him early, in a couple different movies. I always kind of had an eye on him as like this kid's got some talent, and then this movie he blew my mind, like literally blew me away with his ability to. And I'm guessing he's straight. I could be wrong, but in order to play that role, if you're a straight man, wow, that
He had to
takes
he had
a
to go to
lot.
some dark place. Like he's literally
Oof,
said to prepare. He had to go to like some dark places in order to
yeah, I don't think I could
achieve.
do it. Yeah,
No, I
I, mm, it'd be too much, especially to just But that was what enthralled me in it was his portrayal, and I could tell just from like the little trailer that I saw or whatever that he was in the zone, just from what I could see in the trailer, and I was like, okay, I got to watch it now because I could tell, right away that this was going to be good. And of course, from the very first episode, it blows your mind. It comes in with a big punch to the face and or the gut or whatever, and um, if you aren't hooked by that first episode, you don't have any feelings. You know what I mean? Because you're enthralled with the fact of these victims and what they've gone through just from the first one.
yeah. The first episode really begins with like just like how he gets caught.
Yeah,
And so like this was probably like compare like we didn't see um like like how he killed a lot of his victims. Like you would just see, it would be like a montage. Lure
right.
them to the house, take them into his grandmother's basement, and this I couldn't believe it. I thought he did all of his killings when he was living alone, but he did his
Yeah,
killings in his grandmother's house.
yes, he did.
Oh
Yeah,
my god! I'm like, and then there was the part of the then there was the
without her
part.
technically knowing too, which would really blows my mind. It's like how do you not know something like that is going on? Like, oh, so oblivious his grandmother was, but
I mean, she was in her 80s. I'm sure she was developing
right,
dementia at that point. But I liked how he tried to bring it. There were a couple of victims. There were a couple of victims that he didn't kill because of his grandmother's intervention. At least the way the show. I don't know how true it is because I know
well,
the show
sure,
took a lot of artistic license. But like the boy that he that he molested, the Laotian boy.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I forget his name, but he's the brother of the 14-year-old that was famously given back to him by the cops.
right,
um this boy ran off and he was trying to chase him saying, hey, take your $50. And his grandmother was up there looking down, and she kept knocking on the window, and he was just
right.
like, I can't do this, because if there's one thing that he wouldn't do is he wouldn't expose himself to his family.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, that was like his one cliche thing was he was really trying to make sure his family didn't know what his lifestyle was. And
Yeah, I mean, they and then just like and of course then the kid gets away, and then of course that's when he goes away to jail for the first time. And then his father, we what's interesting is usually like with like especially when you hear about horrible things happening, like and like for me, like when I started high school, the Columbine, or right before I started high school, the Columbine shootings happened, and we always heard about the killers, we always heard about the victims, but we really never really heard so much about the parents of the killers so much. At least I didn't know much about the killers of the parents of the killer. So it was interesting having, we see quite a bit of Mr. Dahmer, Lionel Dahmer, his father, and it was just heartbreaking to see see the cops break the news to him. That I mean, like imagine just putting yourself in the place of a parent of a serial killer or something. Like it's just like it's hard to fathom.
yeah, they did this. They did that very well in this series, kind of explaining the family dynamic of what he was involved in, especially with the father, and I would even say the grandmother and the mom somewhat, while she was around. But they were all very dynamic characters and all had very important roles in the show, and interesting stuff. I had no idea about the mannequin. Like I didn't know any of that stuff. Um,
I read about that ahead of time in the
yeah,
Wikipedia in his Wikipedia page. So yeah, he took he stole a mannequin, he ripped off a mannequin, and
right.
he loves to. I mean, I don't want to sound too graphic, but he likes to caress the chests of guys, and he wanted to caress the chest of that muscular looking mannequin.
Well, he was a
And his
big fan
grand
of the heart too. That was the other thing. Was
Yeah, like
yeah,
there's a like in the first episode with that dude that he was that dude that got away, or that dude that got him, that his final attempted victim. I think he literally says to him, "I want to eat your heart."
yeah. That's
I was
exactly
like,
what he says. Yeah,
and I was just like, because of what I knew about Dahmer, like you knew he meant it literally. I was just like, oh, I'm like, oh my god, this guy's dead.
yeah.
And I
If you
didn't
go,
realize that this was the guy that got away and brought the police.
yeah, if you go back and like read what they found, like the sheet of different body parts that they found. I remember the heart being very relevant. Like there was multiple hearts, multiple heads. Um, but yeah, he had a real fetish for the heart and eating the heart too. And he liked eating the arm muscle for some reason.
Yeah.
But the heart was one of the main things that he liked to eat.
Now, I don't think they showed. They didn't really. I don't think they really showed him eating any of the hearts or anything like that, or any of the organs. But we do see him drink the blood, which I just thought was, like, whoa. I was just like,
Whoa,
whoa.
yeah.
It's like, ew.
There was moments like that in the show that um, just the thought of it, was enough to kind of make you cringe, and
Yeah,
um, that's why I really enjoyed it because it never really got too graphic or too gruesome, but the few scenes that you do see are enough to put you on edge, make you unnerved a little bit, and that's what it does very well. It's a very unnerving, um, get inside your head type of series. You're going to think about this after it's over.
I know. I know. I I did quite a bit. And Henry Lewine, to answer your question, yes, yes, yes. We'll get into Christopher Scarver. I had a few issues with how they showed that, because I don't think what they showed with Christopher Scarver, I don't believe truly happened. I just believe he just killed him.
Yeah, I don't remember it being all like him doing research and all this stuff
No,
and making it
I
all
don't think that
religious.
happened.
I just
Well,
thought he killed him because he
they
knew who he
probably,
was.
yeah. I mean, I mean, from what I understand, I mean, I've never been to prison, so I don't know for a fact. But I think prison word gets around about certain people, and word got around about Dahmer. Dahmer was famous, so word getting around is not difficult. And one thing he did say that was doing God's work. But I don't think they had that conversation. I think he just hit him over the head multiple times, probably from behind, and that's it. And
Yeah, I think that's how it went down.
the
If I remember.
guard, like the show made it seem like the guard intentionally did that. The guard
Yeah,
intentionally brought Scarver because he knew what Scarver was capable of, put them in a room together, and just left.
yeah, I think they did that for dramatics,
Yes,
dramatic cause or whatever. Now, I don't know if he killed the other guy or not. I don't know if
he
that
did.
was
He
okay.
did.
So he probably was in a three-way situation where he had an opportunity to do it, so he decided to kill them both, just so he could get to Dahmer. But I know Dahmer was his main goal. I do know that he wanted to kill
He,
Dahmer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the other guy murdered his wife, according to the show, stabbed her in the face.
Hmm.
And then, according to this, and they bring the social angle into it. He tried to pin on two black guys, and well,
Ah,
he got caught, and yeah, so that was part. I mean, maybe I don't know anything about this other guy, this other murderer, so I'll just have to take the show at its word.
yeah, I don't know much about him either. Like I said, I was still very young when all this happened, so I remember it being on TV and tabloids and stuff, but I wasn't old enough to absorb like all the details of it back then. But there's plenty of documentaries out there that you can look into and probably get a little more information on that.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that the show did do quite a bit. I don't know if you felt this way too, but the show really it's unusual, because usually, how like a lot of times fathers are depicted as pieces of crap by most fiction now that's being made in the Golden State. Well, here we it was more the mother that I was more angry at than the father. I mean, the father had some parts, had some part of the responsibility. Like the one thing that should not have happened was them leaving Jeffrey Dahmer as a teenager alone in that house for months. Like I think he was alone for like 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of time. Like, I had a father that worked out of town, so there was occasions as a teenager where I was left home alone for like a week, but nothing like that. That's just insane. Even if he was close to being an adult, they still need guidance, and still need direction. And if you leave a teenager alone for that long a time, he's just going to get into trouble. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, I mean, he was he was obviously subdued, and heck, even in the show, the father said he wasn't comfortable around him. Well, then the kids got some problems, and he needs to have some structure in his life. So what happened? And now I'm not sure how this. Once again, I'm not taking the show as a lot of the stuff in the show I will take as fictional unless that's something that can be easily cited. But like according to the show, like the parents just got divorced and the mother just wanted to move away and she took the other son, she took the less weird son. And the final exchange that she had with Jeffrey uh really pissed me off. She was just completely unhinged the whole time. Like she was just, and like the show goes out of its way to tell the viewer that she's a terrible person based on like how she felt when she was pregnant with him, the fact that she just has so many problems. Like she tried to overdose on drugs and she was taking a lot of drugs while she was pregnant with him. And so that was one of the blames that the father kept pinning on her. And it's just ridiculous. But the fact that she left him and that she wasn't even part of his life for the rest of his life just really I just it just made me angry. Like you
Very
don't
heartless woman. Yeah,
yeah, I mean it's just like you leave, you don't want anything to do with your son because he's weird. What the fuck's the matter with you? That's your kid.
right.
I mean,
And
even if you
well,
didn't want to have a kid, like seriously, like that's not their fault.
right. Well, and what floored me about her was the exposure of her um, multiple different kind of pills and stuff she was taking at the time, and I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was a god awful amount,
Yes.
and just crazy different chemicals she was putting into her body while she was pregnant with him. And I thought that was a very interesting point to the show, is that they made sure to point that out very clearly in the beginning. Even the dad brings it up, like as a flashback scene or whatever. But um, I think, with her being strung out on so many different kinds of meds, and back then they still didn't really understand depression very well. Hell, they really don't even understand it today still.
No.
So some of the stuff they were probably giving her was probably absolutely toxic, and just screwing with her brain. Um, so anything that happened with her, and I don't know how this is true or not either, but according to the show, anything that happened to her after that, like her mood swings and how she acted, I pretty much just looked at it as, okay, this is somebody who's has a serious chemical imbalance from way too many prescription drugs that are messing with her head. And that was the only way I could really, you know, kind of place that character and understand that character without getting like really upset at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, she had her share of problems. I'm sure she had her addictions and everything,
Right.
and the fact that like the husband had to babysit her because of the stuff that she did. And then they get into these arguments, they get into these fights, and he'd be listening out there, he'd be in the house, Jeffrey would be in the house and be listening to these things. And it's just like, i mean i've I'm sure most of us who've grown up with parents fighting, I'm sure we've all heard arguments every now and then. And it was the same with me. I've heard arguments, and it just messes a kid up. And the way they showed it was, especially after one particular fight where they were yelling in the kitchen. It's always in the kitchen. They're yelling in the kitchen, and he gets up. His the son's the he's just Jeffrey's just sitting there in the corridor, and he just runs and Lionel just runs out of the house, doesn't even say anything, just runs out of the house, angry. I think what I was thinking the first, I mean, I'm not a parent, so I don't know like how these things like it just the feeling. I mean, yes, people get angry, but it's not the kid's fault. You have to tell the kid that things are okay. That's not their fault that these things are going down. Um, you just have to count. You have to because the kids are scared when they hear their parents fighting. It's just it's traumatizing to a degree. So you have to. So it's up. For my opinion, it's up to the parents to just kind of help calm them down to make them feel like no, nothing. It's nothing you did, and you just to reaffirm them. And that was another thing I think was missing. Uh, and especially in his childhood. I think that was many factors that led to a lot of things. I don't know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think he was a perfect storm of a lot of horrible things happening to a child to kind of put him in that position of what happened to him. And like you said, with his first murder, it wasn't on purpose. The first one was just kind of an accident that turned into a murder, you know. And
Oh no,
that's
the first one was a murder. He hit him from behind.
right, right. But he didn't do it on purpose. It was an accidental murder. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
like
Like
he got angry. He got angry
right.
for that, and
Right, right. He wasn't planning to kill that guy. He didn't have
yeah,
a plot set up ahead of time for that one. That one he was caught unprepared,
yeah,
and so from that point on, of course, that transition happened because as soon as he got away with it, nobody found out about it. That then of course and I think they even say he takes a long break before he kills somebody else again until he moves in with his grandmother years later after going through military and everything. So the thought was always in the back of his mind of what he did and how he pulled it off and never got caught. And so he was able to indulge it later once he finally had the ability to. And then, of course, it became systematic.
yeah,
So it does show very well what his progression was and kind of why he ended up the way he did.
yeah. It was just the whole idea that like whenever like he had this thing that he had this weird, I don't know if you call it a stigma, where he reacted really violently to whenever people wanted to leave him. That was that
Oh,
was his
yeah.
that was his that was his issue, and maybe it's because his mother left him, and it's because
Yes.
his father left him,
Yes. Yeah, see, the
and his
abandonment was
brother.
a huge issue. You could tell the abandonment and the lack of nurturing as well. Just it seemed like his father wasn't very loving. There was probably hardly any, could good job, son, or let's talk about it. It seemed like the father was always kind of just running out of the situation and just leaving him to deal with his manic depressant mother all the time.
Yeah, like his father didn't even know what's fucked up about this. His father didn't even know that the mother moved out,
Right.
and so he never like bothered checking. He never bothered checking on what was going on in that house for months.
Which
So
is
as
weird because there's telephones back then. You didn't even think to call the house. I mean, I don't. That whole thing seemed really weird to me. If that's
Yeah,
true.
I mean, like, don't you want all your sons doing at least or something?
Right?
It's ridiculous. I mean, so I'm not
Both
gonna
of them.
just I'm
Yeah.
not gonna pin. This is not just on the mother. It's also on the father too.
That was the
So
other thing I found weird about the father was, at least in the show, was he never really talked about the other son. The one that kind of disappeared, and it was always just him focusing on Jeffrey after that. And I always thought, well, where's the other son, and why aren't you fighting for him, and what's up with that? So there was a few plot holes with the whole parenting thing, trying to kind of wrap my mind around it.
yeah, so like David, the younger brother David went with the mother, and then like he just I guess he had no like virtually no relationship with his with Jeffrey. And I mean, and he's very, and I think even to this day, he's very, um, what's a good word? I'm not gonna say incognito, but um, anonymous. He's very he's anonymous. Like nobody knows. We don't even know what he looks like. So So I think
Right.
that's probably
Yeah.
why we never saw him, is because he was not even involved at all in
Yeah.
the life. And like, no, like he's never went on interviews. He's never made any comments, and we don't know his true feelings on this, but we just know that he did not get swept up in this media
What
thing.
could he really say? The last time he saw his brother when was before he was even killing people. He was still a kid himself. So yeah,
Yeah,
there isn't much he could say except for what happened in the childhood years.
yeah, exactly. So we just see him as a kid, and then his mother, spirits him away to.
Right.
I think they were in Ohio. I think during the childhood, I think they were in Ohio, and then she moved up to. I think she moved up to like Wisconsin or Minnesota, some of one of those cities, or I'm
Something
not
like
say
that.
states, one of that roughly in that area.
Right.
So, but yeah, I want to answer this question. So was Dahmer schizophrenic? I don't think he was. What did he have? Let me see. Actually have the wiki up. What did he have? He had like antisocial personality disorder, I believe, which is obvious.
Definitely had
Um,
necrophilia and um, a few other weird ones like that.
Schizotypal personality disorder. I don't know if that's the same thing as schizophrenia. Mental and
Mm,
behavioral disorder, DSM classification disorder, personal disorder, thought disorder, paranoia, characteristics, social anxiety, derealization. I don't even know what that means.
hmm,
Derealization, alteration or in the perception of the external world, causing those with conditions to perceive it as unreal, distant, distorted, or falsified.
hmm.
Transient psychosis. Hmm. Hmm. I guess he was. I guess he was to a degree. I guess he was to a degree. So, but the borderline personality disorder, yeah, and of course he was psychotic. He couldn't control himself. He couldn't
Right.
control his impulses, and that's why he did what he did. And yeah, and he got great. I'm assuming he got great pleasure out of doing it. That's why he kept doing it.
Well, if you
So
watch his after he got caught, he did a few interviews, and if you watch those, you get to find out a little more about him. And he actually said on a few different occasions that he was glad he was locked up, and he was glad he was never getting out because he knew that if he did, he would just start doing it again. He's like the urge was still there. Didn't matter what he did or said or anything. I think he even found God, like in the show, but he always admitted to the fact that he still wanted to do it. Like the thought was still in the back of his head.
that's what made him different from like Gacy and the other serial killers. Whereas, do you believe what he said when he said that he only drugged people so that they wouldn't feel the pain of what he was going to do?
I,
That he still had some conscience in that regard.
yeah, I think of course, I can't get inside his head, but um, from what it looks like, there was still some kind of remorse there in his own weird, twisted way, where he didn't really necessarily want to see suffering because to him, obviously it was somewhat of a sexual experience. So I don't think the suffering really turned him on as much as just the fact that he was in control. That was his
Yeah.
big turn on.
The
Yeah.
control. Yeah, I
Yep.
agree. Apparently, Bundy had a normal childhood. Huh. That's what makes Bundy even weirder. To be honest, like you would
But
think, most serial killers had like hard childhoods, were treated poorly, and that's why they are what they are.
well, Bundy was a womanizer first, and then became a killer. Yeah. So he
Yeah,
was. Yeah. He used his charm and his good looks and all that to his benefit.
hmm
And I think, if I remember right, with Bundy, he was uh, very rough and abusive with his first couple of girlfriends, and then it just escalated to where he started killing them.
yeah. He was married. I mean, in the movie, like that Zac Efron movie, he was married to somebody, and he never touched his wife. But nobody knew what he did. Like
Yeah.
that was the weird thing about it. And we don't really see it. We don't in that movie. We didn't even see a whole lot of killing. Like we only see it in very very quick edited flashbacks, like very quick
Hmm.
silent flashbacks. It's like just enough to make you just for you to imagine what he's capable of.
I got a couple crazy stories with Ted Bundy. So I grew up in the Seattle area, Washington State, which was one of his favorite hunting grounds. And the first time my family, I should say, was involved with Ted Bundy was my mother just happened to be, and she was only a teenager at the time, so he very easily could have went after her as well. But my mother was actually at the lake on one of the days that he did go to the lake and pretend like he was handicapped or whatever, and or had a cast or something like that, and got a girl to help him like put something in his van or something, and it all went down in a lake where they were all swimming. It was during the summer. Well, anyway, that kidnapping that happened at on that occasion, my mom just happened to be at the lake when it happened, but she was like on the other end of the lake or something like that. But um, so she was really freaked out by that. I remember, and this is all before I was even born. And then a few years ago, which is really crazy, I was at an old bar, and I met up with some friends after a Seahawks game, and this was back when I was going up and doing fundraiser concerts and stuff like that, charity events, and because I had a viral Seahawks anthem that was kind of going crazy at the time. Well, anyway, we were hanging out at this bar and found out from some friends, while we were hanging out there, that the whole backstory of this bar was it was another one of Ted Bundy's favorite hunting grounds, and there was actually people would carve their name. The place was so old; it had wood paneling on the walls. People would carve their names in, and I guess there was an area there where a couple of his victims had carved their name before they died and stuff like that. Funny thing is we partied there that night, played a bunch of my music and stuff like that. It was after a big game that we won, and I actually left and jumped on a plane that very next morning. And all of a sudden, as soon as I landed off the plane, my phone goes off. Because my phone was off while I was on the plane. Come to find out, that place burned to the ground later that night. So it's just one of those weird things, where I was like, the whole time I had that Evie, creepy, weird vibe, while I was hanging out there, knowing that it was that Ted Bundy spot, and then just happens to burn down after the night I was there. It was very weird.
Whoa, that is weird. Wow.
So yeah, I got some Ted Bundy in the family, history, so to speak.
That's crazy because I remember, like, I think they showed that scene in the movie, and I think that's where like in Silence of the Lambs, that's where they got the idea for Buffalo Bill to pretend he had a broken arm or he had a hard time with the
Maybe,
moving
yeah,
furniture. I think that's
yeah,
where they got the idea from.
probably,
So,
yeah.
so it wasn't just Ed Gein. I think they took a whole bunch of serial killers, and that's how they created Buffalo Bill.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah,
That's
we've had a
crazy.
few serial killers up there. The Green River Killer is probably the next most famous from that area, and he was known for killing prostitutes and throwing them in the river, but
Now
he
I'm
killed like
assuming they never
30,
caught
40
him
of them.
because he doesn't have a name.
Uh, I, yeah, I'd have to go look it up again. I can't remember if that was the one they caught or not. There's been a couple of them, but yeah, one of them I think never got caught. Kind of like the Zodiac.
Yeah, I know it's it's crazy. Just how well they cover their tracks and how like they just at some point they just stop doing what they're doing
Hmm.
because if they might do it again, there's always a chance that they'll get caught. I mean, look at Dahmer got caught eventually, Gacy got caught, Bundy got caught. Wow,
There.
Bundy escaped. Bundy escaped twice, I think,
Yes, he did. Yeah, yeah, he did.
and then he killed more people. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, like his last run at it, I think he like escaped and went immediately to a sorority, if I remember right. It
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
crazy.
It's just
Yeah,
like you like how do you get in? You just like lock your doors.
right.
Do not leave your doors open. I mean, Sharon Tate and all them made that mistake, and then of course the Mansons just came in and murdered them. I mean,
There was
it's
another one that got caught too, recently, where they didn't know who he was for like 40 something years. He was a guy that did a bunch of murders in California. He used to break into homes and rape the wives and stuff. Um, and then like tie up the husband and by gunpoint. And God, I can't think of the name of the killer. They had a name for him. I have to look him up. But he was in California, and he was like he just stopped one day, and like 40 years later, they finally caught him because the DNA evidence finally caught up to our technology or whatever, and they were able to figure it out. Damn it! And they hauled him in and everything. God, I'm gonna have to look it up now. But
No, it wasn't the Night Stalker because he got
no, it
caught.
wasn't him. No, it was another one. Um, I'll have to look it up. Let's see if I can figure it out. He got caught like years later.
We'll have to, you have to let me know. But yeah, that's just crazy right there. And just
There he
just the
is. All I had to do was type in small penis. Okay, so Golden State Killer Joseph D'Angelo. Uh, the reason why he was well known is because he had a micro peen, and all his victims, pointed that out about him. That's how they knew he was. But yeah, Joseph James D'Angelo. He was the Golden State Killer, and he was 74 when he finally got caught. He hadn't murdered anybody in like 30 something years.
Oh, okay. And so
Yeah,
but he was always wearing a mask, so they could never identify him.
yeah, and he did it at night. Um, I'm looking over it right now, but yeah, he was. There's been a few just crazy ones. Um, and he didn't kill them all. Like a lot of his were just victims from rape, but
Yeah.
he did kill quite a few.
So like the rape, I'm assuming he wore a mask, or he kept his face concealed when he was
Hmm.
pulling that crap off, when he was pulling that shit off. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh wow. And just to think, like, I mean, one thing I knew about before, because coworkers have told me this, older coworkers who followed the Jeffrey Dahmer case. I learned from, I forget which job it was. Even forget who told me this, but I learned about the kid that the police had in custody, but the police returned him to Dahmer's custody.
oh, I
I
know.
heard about that first, and then I watched it here, and I was just like, "Oh no, no." So my question for you is this: I'm curious what your position is, because I know the show's position clearly is, um, those two Caucasian cops were sloppy, and B, they were this and that because they didn't listen to a woman of color's complaints about,
Right.
her calling to check up on, like, if they did the due diligence to check if that kid was actually an adult like Dahmer claimed, or if he was actually really a kid, because they looked at the kid, he's like, this kid does not look like an adult. Did you guys check? And they kept saying, yes, we checked. Like, they called every time. She called every time, and they kept giving her uh, the same talking point. And it's just, it's crazy. Like, it's like, do you think, do you think it was racially motivated, or do you think it was late at night, they didn't want to get in between a gay quarrel or whatever, and they just phoned it in, and they were just like, whatever, or they just didn't care.
I think it was a combo of all of it. This was Michigan, right? Where this went down, or Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, this was Milwaukee.
Wisconsin. So, this is still a good 10 years before like the Rodney King stuff, and um,
I think it was the same time, actually. It was 91. I think Rodney
uh,
King stuff happened in 91, 92,
and he was caught when?
and 91.
Oh, okay, so okay, maybe it was like right before it. Maybe interesting.
So I know the Rodney King
Um,
stuff happened all the way in L.A., and I'm sure Jesse Jackson was, he made his
mhm,
appearance there. So
right. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I hmm, I think it was a combo of all three. Because I know if I was, and of course the gay stuff was way more taboo back then too, of course. But um, I know if I was a police officer and was in that situation, it'd be hard to know how to react as well because if most of the stuff you're trying to figure out is checking out, um, it's going to be hard to argue the point. The biggest problem there was I think the cops should have took a little more time to question the kid and try to get some kind of legitimate answers out of him. I don't know, and I know he was really fucked up, but most cops you would think would shine light in his eyes, try to get some answers to a couple of questions. So that part of it seemed kind of strange.
Yeah, and he had the and I didn't even know this. He had a drill, and he drilled like into the back of his head or something. That's why he was the way he was. And
Really? Yeah, I thought he was
yeah,
just drugged up. I didn't think he drilled him yet.
I well, well, maybe you could actually, you could be right, but I thought he did that beforehand. I thought he did
He
that
might
before,
have.
and that's kind of why he was the way he
Right?
was, just kind of like a
Yeah.
zombie.
I
And
think most of the time when he tried drilling him, it usually killed him, from what I recall. Like, because it never
um,
really worked very well for him.
yeah, because okay, maybe it's the drugs then, but it's just crazy. Like, and what they showed was, Jesse Jackson tries to put pressure on the mayor and the chief, and what ultimately happened was the unions. I think the unions tried to sue or something, and the judge just ruled in favor of the union, and they got reinstated right away.
Hmm.
And what's
Well,
weird is the scene where they show him get reinstated. You see a black cop, and he just gives him a dirty look and walks away. Like
right.
gives a look of disapproval and then walks away. And I was just like, okay, we get it, we get it right there.
Yeah,
So
I think a little bit of that might have been fluffed up for the show.
yeah, I think so too. I
Because if you
mean,
go watch Dahmer's testimony, because I went and watched some of the actual courtroom footage after this show just to kind of get some more concept of what really happened, and a lot of it they portrayed really well and very factual. But Dahmer, when he did his final speech, so to speak, before his sentencing, he did make sure to point out that the cops were just doing their job, and it was all him that um, tricked him basically, and made him. He took all the blame off of them because he had already heard, I think, at that point that they were being attacked for racism and stuff like that. So
yeah,
um, he actually went out of his way to try and take the heat off the cops and put it back on himself.
yeah,
And that's his actual testimony, the real life one.
yeah. I think we hear it in the show too. He says like, I didn't do this out of hate. Like I didn't hate
Yeah,
anybody. I just wanted to do stuff. I just wanted to do
control.
stuff. I wanted to
Yeah,
control. I had these impulses. It's not because I hated them.
right.
So I mean, and like you said, um, it's just like the what he did after being caught was like, I mean, in some ways, it's really hard for me because like you want to feel that like even someone like him can be like redeemable or forget, or as the final episode it's called Forgiven.
Hmm.
um it's just like but for like, you think of the people that were directly affected, the 17 guys that were murdered. Some of them were children. I mean, you got to think of their families, all their brothers, sisters, everyone in their family. You got to think about everybody in their family, and then you got to think about all their friends and the people that they've meant something to.
Right.
And it goes in like, for 17 people, I think it go in the tens of thousands, like that were directly affected by this. And
I'm sure.
it's just something that I can't. I think would be it'd be too much of a hurdle to try to expect someone in that position to forgive. But I'm glad they showed that, and I'm glad they also showed just the fact that he was still a human being, and that I mean, I didn't want to, I didn't want to, I don't want to. I'm not telling people to worship a guy, and people are like, why can't we just forget about him, and why are they glorifying serial killers? Well, I don't think this show is glorifying serial killers. To me, this show was a period piece that was showing a particular person that was doing certain things. And I think people, especially kids, need to learn about, to know, or people, young people, people of all ages, actually, to
Right.
know, like, you have to be able to identify a predator when you see one, and to know
Yeah.
like what all the red flags. So I think this was for in my opinion, this was for educational purposes, um, and just to give you an insight into what the victims went through. I know a lot of people don't want to do that, and I fully understand why. And it's like, just like, once again, the reopening the wounds is never it's never a good thing. So that backlash was going to come regardless.
Hmm.
Um, by the way, one thing that I did find uh, amusing, and I don't say this lightly, the mother of the deaf the deaf victim was named Tony. She was in the Cosby Show. I couldn't have, like, she was in the Cosby Show.
Oh, really? I
I
didn't
think
notice
she
that.
was like
Yeah.
Vanessa, or I think she was Vanessa's friend
Hmm.
in the Cosby Show. I think, or maybe Theo's friend. Maybe she was Theo's friend.
I can't remember. Yeah. I thought she looked familiar though. Yeah.
She was on an old sitcom. She was on, I think she was on an 80s. She was either on an 80s or 90s sitcom. I think it was
Hmm.
the Cosby Show. So I was
That's
just like,
interesting.
hey, yeah. So that was probably the one thing I found amusing. But other than that, I find none of this funny. This is. I feel this is something that should be discussed, and I feel this is something that should be, people should be aware of. And I mean, like you said, I don't believe in glorifying serial killers. I do believe that we need to learn from what the victims went through. We need to learn what serial killers are like, and we're learning more every year.
Hmm.
And this will save lives of, future kids, future generations who are, dealing with it. Because I've read a whole bunch of other cases. Like, there was one case where a kid was missing. One thing I didn't even bother to go by. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place. Um, another reason why I got in a lot of crime. My parents watched the news quite a bit, and you
Okay.
know what was on quite a bit? Dateline NBC, and we did these stories of, like, missing peoples, or crimes happening, and they have these investigative journalists going into it. So that's where I learned a lot. I learned a whole bunch of stuff about true crime, and I think that's where I kind of got some of that interest. So some of that interest came from. I don't know if you've watched a lot of news, or journal, or, investigative journalists, like 2020,
Yeah.
or
I
Dateline,
think.
or
I think as a kid.
Nightline, or
I think as a kid, my parents always sat down and watched, like, I think it was like Inside Edition and a few of these other ones. America's Most Wanted. So there was a lot of different types of shows back then. Um, I really got interested in them when I started discovering documentaries. The more documentaries I started discovering about just different serial killers, it felt like you were literally watching, or at least hearing, a horror story, um, from a perspective of a narrator that was just giving you the facts. They weren't trying to water it down. They weren't trying to glorify it either. It was just, this is what happened. And for me, that was like the next best thing to reading like a Stephen King book. Some of the stories that you'd read and something like that could be horrific and gruesome, but very enthralling and a page turner. Same thing happened with some of these documentaries that came out, like with Gein and Dahmer. I mean, it was like, when I first watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and found out about Ed Gein and who he was based off of, just the whole idea of somebody taking the time to stitch together a leather mask was just very wild to me. It's like, who would come up with something like that? So it makes you dig in and kind of find out where these people are from, why they thought of this, what made them do it, and it's just the normal human curiosity to understand the the weirdness of your world. It's the same thing as like back in the day when people would go to a freak show. You know,
yeah,
they'd want to see the most weirdest, ugliest thing they'd ever seen before, because it's in their mind. They have something, what they think it is, and they go to see it. You know what I mean? It's the
yeah.
same type of thing, I think. Just what we call morbid curiosity.
Yeah, morbid curiosity makes it. Yeah, yeah, we
Right.
all, yeah, we've all had that one or another. But I want to read this super chat. So Henry Lemoyne for 4.99. He says, "I feel that I feel like that's a big difference between Dahmer and Bundy. I think Bundy was more sadistic and enjoyed inflicting pain and had more hatred. Um, Honestly, the inflicting pain part, I agree with. The hatred, I don't know. Maybe, perhaps. I mean, he if he did, he concealed it really well. Um, but the same with Gacy. Like they're like like we saw that scene in the beginning of episode 10, and this I did not see that coming. I did not see them showing anything for Gacy and showing him killing that dude in the beginning. And it made me it made it didn't just make me cringe. I think I shed a few tears seeing that, like, because I know it was based off of something that really happened. And it's just heartbreaking to see.
Oh,
um
that guy, he had like 30 victims buried in his basement. I mean, he was a
Crawl space.
collector, right?
Yeah,
Just
he didn't eat people. And one thing I couldn't stand, in my opinion, you had the character Glenda Cleveland, who was actually a woman that lived, in a different building. She didn't actually live next door to Dahmer, so Dahmer never offered her a sandwich. He never tried to get Dahmer, evicted and everything. But like I like how, like, they show her, like, they made like a whole episode about her, and they show her, like, it seemed like she felt like she was responsible. She was like very emotional, getting involved with the victims' families. And I was just like, I'm kind of finding this hard to believe. But the one thing that really annoyed me about something she said was, because they were that same episode 10, where they're showing, like, because this was 1990. This was, Dahmer was caught. This was early 1994. I remember they even talk about the freaking solar eclipse. I remembered that. I was 9. I was in third grade when that happened. I remembered that day. And that was the same day that Gacy got executed. So they had Gacy all over the news, and she's watching it from her work, from the lunchroom, like from the cafeteria, and she's like, "My guy is worse." I'm like, I mean, in regards to the fact that he was, cannibalistic, okay, but in terms of what he put his victims through, no. So I'm just like, but she didn't understand. I mean, but to put in context of what you knew at the time, sure, sure. I just kind of found it annoying because of what I know, the context of what I know versus
right.
what they knew back then. So
But I think there was a bit of a narrative message undertone that was kind of put on the top. It's very subtle, but it's there, and I think that's why they kind of focused on her character being the next door neighbor so much, um, and like the backlash that we've been hearing about against the LGBTQ community or whatever. I'm surprised they didn't pull the racial card, because back then that's what it was. It was more the racial card than it was the gay community. Nowadays, with this new series coming out, it's pushed back because of the gay community and not so much the racial one. So I'm just dumbfounded by the sheer blatant stupidity, where people just don't realize the guy was a serial killer. He didn't care as long as he got his fix for the night. He may have preferred people that were, of another ethnicity, but he even said it, I think, in the show or maybe one of his interviews, that it was never about race to him. It was just about finding the best looking guy he could find.
yeah, and plus he lived in that neighborhood. He didn't live in that neighborhood because he wanted to. He lived in that neighborhood
Right.
because that's what he could afford.
Sure.
So, and the
And it
thing
was real
was,
close to that club that he liked to go to a lot.
yeah, and the thing was, the club showed that, I've been hearing, like, like the gay clubs that they had in Milwaukee were actually pretty mixed with people of, of all, you had Hispanic, Caucasian, Black,
Right.
Asian, and everything. It was
Yeah.
more mixed, whereas in the show they depicted it as mostly black.
No.
So it was.
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't think that was true
that
either.
was just another. I mean, so I think maybe, yeah, he I don't think, I mean, his victims were, I mean, majority of his victims were black. That's true. Um,
There was
I mean,
Asians, Hispanics, white people. He
yeah,
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he killed. I mean, he killed every dude of every. Didn't kill any women though, so the ladies
Yeah,
were
he never
safe.
touched the women.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
and I just liked how like he says. I like how he says like he had a lot of female fans. I mean, because he was he was not fat. He wasn't fat disgusting piece of shit like Gacy was. He was actually pretty trim, pretty fit. It's he had a lot of female fans out there, and they would send him pictures like porn pictures of their you know private parts, and he would sell them. He would sell them. He's like, I have no use. He literally says, I have no use for them.
Yeah,
I
I
was
know
just
that's
like, oh
kind of
shit. I'm
funny.
like, dang it, come on. I was like, yeah, that's. I thought that was funny. Um,
Or the
but
parts where his father would like try to get some kind of uh, information out of him about what his love life or his sex life was like, because you could tell his father knew he was off and something wasn't right, so he kept trying to like throw little subtle hints throughout
yeah,
the times he would meet up with him to kind of pick at him and see if it was really true, was he really gay.
yeah.
And that was funny when he got the box. Remember the box where he
Hmm.
freaked out about the box, and he got it. He finally opened it, and of course it had porn in there, so he had already like kind of
He took the
pre
head out.
hidden
He had a
the head.
head in there. Oh,
I know. He and what they didn't show, I think, in the show was that he used to take the head to work. He would take the head to work with him. They didn't show that in the show, I believe.
really?
Yeah, that was
No, they
actually
didn't show it.
that was one of the things he would do. He got to a point where he was just so confident in what he was doing that he wasn't going to get caught, that he pushed his limits. And yeah, he took his head to work sometimes, left it in the locker.
But just like like remember I think the first victim. So he killed that kid. He picked up this kid. He was a kid. He was a kid too. So he picks this guy
Right.
up. The guy's hitchhiking. He's like, oh, let's. He's like, I'm going to a concert. He's like, oh, well, I'll drive you, but let's stop off at my place and let's have some beers and let's lift some weights. And then it get then of course it really starts when like he actually he kissed the dude, and the dude wasn't gay. He's just like called him the other the F word that
Hmm.
he can't say here.
Right.
And then that's just he got angry, and he just it was a murder of passion him with the weight. And what's weird
Yeah.
was I was surprised because if I was the editor, especially for that final scene where he gets killed by the weights, I would have shown his initial kill with the weights, and they did do that. So I was actually pretty impressed. I was actually pretty impressed with them incorporating, reminding the audience of what he did, and
Right. Yeah. Like
how
it
he
came
started all this.
came full circle, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and of course, like like I think we already talked about the backlash, but like people are saying, like younger people are online are saying like the reason why Jeffrey Dahmer was able to get away with this was because the police were uh, there was let's just say there was a systemic thing that starts with an R, 6 letter word that starts with an R, systemic this, and they didn't
Oh
care
yeah.
about, and they didn't care, they cared more about what Dahmer had to say over what anyone else had to say. And I have no comment on that because based on what those cops did, I mean it's not hard to think
Right.
that there was some of the R word in what they did.
Well, these kids today are stupid because they don't realize that there was no social media back then, and so without social media to kind of keep people intertwined in what they're doing and what's going on in their lives, you had no idea how many closet quote unquote homosexuals were out there.
Yeah.
And so you had all these different men that would secretly go to these clubs, and if they disappeared, they disappeared, and you wouldn't know where to tie it to because their lifestyle was hidden. So that's why he really found the perfect victims for that time, because he was going after men for the most part that were hiding their lifestyle,
Yeah.
somewhat, if maybe not from their family, but definitely usually from their work or their
Hmm.
colleagues and stuff like that. Um, and even though it was the 90s and things were starting to become a little more, oh, you can let your freak flag fly type of stuff, it was still kind of taboo to be out in the open with your quote unquote gayness. And that didn't really start happening till later 90s. And so I think back in these this time that he was in, he really found the perfect, hunting grounds, so to speak, to uh, cure his fetish. And not only was he obviously a homosexual, um, he made sure to do it to people, for the most part, that he figured wouldn't get noticed missing. Like that guy that he
Yeah.
dragged back to the hotel. That
Mm-hmm.
was just a lot of them were quote unquote whores. Guys that got around and went to
Yeah.
bathhouses all the time and stuff like that. So
And
same thing like with the River Killer, the Green River Killer. All he did was kill prostitutes. That's why he got away with it for so long, because these were down and out women that had no family or friends. So he was
yeah,
just picking them off like they were nothing.
it was the same with, I think, H. Holmes. Like he hired women back in 1893, his murder hotel in Chicago.
Mm.
He wanted women that didn't, like, like, don't, if you have family, don't tell them that you're here, blah blah blah, and of course then he would take out like life insurance policies on them, and
Right.
then they'd make money off of their, killing it off of their deaths. It was ridiculous.
Or there's the truck stop killer. I don't know if you heard about him, but they're like he's really famous for the photograph of the girl that there's like a photo of her where she went missing for weeks, and they finally found her remains. And when they caught him, they found a photo of her like right before she died, and it was right in the farm or barn that they had found the body in. But he was a truck stop killer, and he was known for going around and picking up hitchhikers or prostitutes at
Yeah.
the truck stops, and taking them out and killing them, and dragging them to a different state, before he,
Mm-hmm.
got rid of them. Uh, yeah, so it's a lot of twisted suckers out there that did a lot of bad stuff, but they took, full advantage of their discreetness, and finding victims that were hard to, you know, trace.
Yeah, the this like especially when Dahmer asks the priest, he's like, where people like me came from, and the priest had an interesting answer. Now this was something that kind of, I was like, huh, was because not only the development of the city, but the development of the highway system, that
Hmm.
now you can travel, you can travel vast distances
Right.
within a shorter amount of time and get rid of bodies and just be able to get away,
Yep.
and just to get away with it. It's just ridiculous. It's just, once again, it's just ridiculous. Like, this where this, and it really started in, like, in the 60s and 70s, well, mainly the 70s.
Yep. Especially
So,
with hitchhikers and stuff.
mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
was Dahmer's first victim, was a hitchhiker.
And what's weird was the hitchhiker was 18. I forget what show he was trying to go to, but yeah. But then and this is what really kicked off his serial killing, was that dude that you said in the hotel that he brings to the hotel. And the thing was, he drugged himself. So what he was doing beforehand, he was drugging. So he was picking up these dudes, taking them to like bathhouses, and he would drug them. And the reason why he couldn't go to the bathhouses anymore is because he would leave them. He would leave them drugged to the point where the owner had to always call the police or call the hospital, and they kept track that they figure out that Dahmer was the one doing this, so that's why they kicked him out. They kicked him out of that particular bathhouse, and he called all the other bathhouses to make sure that they didn't admit him. So that's why he took that dude to the hotel, and he ended up just killing him. And he didn't. What's weird was he had no recollection of it. So because he didn't have a recollection of it, we didn't have a recollection. We didn't see it. It was
Yeah,
all.
I always wondered what actually happened during that one, but that was interesting that they just didn't show us anything, because that's exactly what happened to him. He accidentally drugged himself, and
Yeah.
managed to stay awake long enough to drug the other guy too, and basically, yeah, had a blackout and woke up with a dead body.
Yeah, it's yeah, like I said, it's just like, you see, you see what was left of him, like his chest, the guy's chest was caved in, and then he's like, okay, what am I going to do with this? We're in a hotel, somebody's going to find it. I know. Well, I'll put him in a briefcase. I was like, whoa, this is a comedy now? Like, he literally managed. It was like something out of, like, a funny. It was like something out of an 80s comedy, or like Weekend at Bernie's type of thing. Just, you have
Yeah,
a body, you put it in the freaking suitcase, And I don't know how he managed to do that, but he did. And he
Well,
picked
you
up
get a
the
big
guy was
enough
like probably 100.
suitcase.
The
Yeah,
guy was like probably 170 pounds,
sure.
160, 170 pounds. So he's lifting that, which must be incredibly. I mean, it's like whoa,
Yeah.
like you're trying to carry a briefcase with two hands. You're surprised, like just it's just surprising, but it's not surprising how nobody gives a shit. Like
Well,
people see
that or
stuff and they're like, I'm
yeah,
not getting involved. Nope.
that or maybe it had wheels, or he used a cart to help get it down, or
Oh,
something
that's
like
right. He
that.
did have wheels. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind then.
Right, but still, it was. I don't think he's the only one to ever do that. I'm pretty sure that's been done in some other murders before. Um, but not usually with men. I think it was usually like with women that were smaller and easier to compact into a suitcase.
No.
But yeah, that's just crazy. And that's the thing is, once he got away with the second time, not only the first time with this house and having a big stretch of time from that kill to the next one, the second time he got away with it again, and that's probably where he started indulging that part of it, just the high of knowing that he could get away with it. So that, I think, fed his urge, and then of course with his very, very oblivious grandmother. Pretty much just allowing him to have his own meat cave in her basement, only just probably exemplified his desire and his tortures and his tools and all his stuff that he basically honed his craft in his grandma's basement. So
Yeah.
if anything, she was kind of an accomplice, even though she didn't realize it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You might be right on that, but it's just like yeah, she's just like he
What's
really
that
he
smell, grandson? I mean, come on,
yeah.
grandma.
It's same with like and they did call he did call I think she did call the father to
She
figure out
did.
what that smell was.
Yeah.
So they did try to address that, and he's just like it's nothing. He's like, oh, it's nothing.
My
It's nothing.
taxidermy. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
He
a
definitely
text.
leaned on the taxidermy stuff to get him off the hook for a lot of things.
Yeah. Once I heard taxidermy, I thought once again I thought Ed Gein. I thought Psycho for because Norman Bates is really into taxidermy. And if you ever seen Bates Motel,
Oh, it's not the series. No, I heard it was pretty good though.
yeah, I mean the only thing is it's Carlton Cuse, so the guy that did Lost.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that might be the only issue. I mean, did the show end bad? It didn't end bad, but
Well, Norman Bates came back and did like two or three sequels to Psycho, if I remember correctly.
yeah, Psycho 2 was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It was directed by that one dude that directed. There's this Australian or no, this Canadian. There's this one Canadian movie about this guy following a truck driver. This truck driver following this killer who kills people with wire. And so it was like imagine Rear Window, but with truck driver instead of somebody in
Mm.
an apartment. So yeah, same idea. So
Yeah. No, I love this show, and I feel like it really hit on a psychological level watching it. Something that I haven't really felt since like I kept coming back to The Shining, and the kind of feelings I would get when I watched that, the first couple of times, and um, just the subliminal horror of knowing how bad it's going to get before it even gets there, because the movie really is putting you in a mood, so to speak, and the atmosphere and all that. And that's what this show does. It creates just an amazing atmosphere and pulls you into it, and kind of keeps you on edge. Keeps you uh, you know uh, disturbed and uncomfortable, but still totally encapsulated. And that's exactly what like The Shining did for me. And a few. There's only a few films out there that can really dig into your brain a little bit. And like I said, after it was over, it's one of those things that you're gonna think about. Seven, yeah, that's another good one that where you think about it quite a bit after the movie was over. The images would be stuck in your mind. Um, one that comes to my mind right away is that crazy porn thing that was made. You know, the guy had to put on a strap on. Remember that was had a barbed sharp knife end on it from Seven. I'm talking about Seven, the movie Seven.
Oh, seven.
But yeah, it was just one of those images that you never get out of your mind, even though it never showed anything that happened with it. They just showed him wearing it, the guy that they
Mm-hmm.
found. But stuff like that, if you create the right atmosphere and just show the right little pieces of it, it's funny we're talking about a cannibal and saying pieces, but if you show the right little pieces of what you need to show, that's all you need to really get into your mind. And
Yeah.
Shining is the same thing. The Shining wasn't really that graphic. There's only technically one true murder in the movie, um, but it's still the whole movie. The atmosphere of it is just whoa. You know, it grabs you.
One thing that it will never get out of your mind is the bathtub part in The
Oh
Shining.
God, yes.
That part. I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that mortified me as a kid.
Oh
The first time I seen
yes.
it,
Mm-hmm.
mortified me. Yeah, that old lady. I'll never get that vision of her out of my head.
Yeah, it was just so ridiculous. And the music, like the type of music that that Kubrick used. So
Yes.
he wanted to create his own version of a horror. Well, he succeeded. He succeeded greatly.
Yeah, he nailed it
And like,
for sure.
the thing is that the composition of shots was very similar to stuff they did earlier, like 2001 and Clockwork Orange, and heck, even Barry Lyndon to a degree. So, um, but but before we get any further, I want to say hello to Dempsey's here. Dempsey brings up the movie Fallen. You ever see Fallen?
I have. That's the one with
I think it was
Denzel,
Denzel,
right? Yeah.
Denzel, and I think John Goodman. I think I've not
Was it
seen
John
that one. I think
Goodman?
that's the one where
Okay.
there's people, demons possessing people or something.
Yes. Yes. It was interesting. It's different.
So I have yet to see that. The one movie I think of, the one thriller I really liked was The Bone Collector that he was in. Remember The Bone
That was a
Collector?
good one too.
That was a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
I need to see more Denzel movies. Like I've only seen Training Day once.
Oh, yeah, it's a classic, and his Equalizer movies are really good too.
Man on Fire was great too.
And so was Book of Eli. Yeah.
I've not seen Book of Eli. My one of my old buddies saw Book of Eli. So
Oh,
that's
you gotta see Book of Eli just because the bad guy is played by what's his name? Ah, the guy who played Dracula with Keanu Reeves and the
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. Yes,
Okay.
Gary Oldman's the bad guy in that one.
Okay. I'll definitely have to check that out. So um the you know what's funny, in the original book, it was a dog suit, not a beer suit in the Shining. And it was supposed to be a dude who was homosexual, who was obviously the bear guy in the beer suit was in the movie was blowing the other
Right,
hotel guy. So they're like, the hotel itself has its own like stories and mythology to that is only touched upon in that is only touched upon in the movie. Like Kubrick doesn't like to explain things, and if you try to get him into an interview, he will still not explain like
well,
why he did what he did.
that's what happened between him and Stephen King, because Stephen King actually wrote like a whole screenplay and everything for the movie. And
And he didn't use it.
Kubrick grabbed it and he kind of looked at it, threw it in the trash, said, "No, we're gonna do our own thing." So that's why he was a little mad
That's
about
why
it.
Stephen King had that's why Stephen King had such hard feelings about Kubrick, because
Yeah.
Kubrick took a look. He's like, even though like, Stephen King was still a younger, he was still a younger and newer writer. He was still kind of new.
Oh yeah.
He
The
only
Shining was only his third book, if I remember right. Yeah.
Yeah, his first book published was Carrie, and then the second book was Salem's Lot,
Okay.
and then I think then The Shining. So,
Right. Sounds
um,
right.
but and Zombie Main says, thank you so much for the shout out earlier. No, no problem. Your freaking Metroid cover, your Justin Bailey was awesome, and I'm gonna tell everyone about it. So, but yeah, earlier I was doing a stream reacting to the new Mario movie. So they had a Nintendo Direct where they had Miyamoto himself come on and say, here's Illumination, and here's a sneak peek at the very first animated Super Mario Brothers movie in relation with Nintendo. So, and of course I shouted out during that time. So did you? I'm not even sure if you're even into Mario, but the trailer actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, no, I'm not like a huge fan or anything. Like I don't collect Mario or anything like that. We have Nintendos, we have a Switch, and my son really loves Mario. Um, but I thought the trailer looked good. Like I was like, okay, this looks entertaining. Like this could be a good animation, fun film to go take the kid to. I didn't see any like woke ideology or BS like that in there, and it seemed pretty true to the Nintendo spirit, from what I could tell. So yeah, look, like a worthy movie of the Mario name. Way better than whatever the heck that was they put out back in the 90s.
Oh, you
Um,
mean Bob Hoskins as Mario and John
yes.
Leguizamo as
Oh,
Luigi? Yeah,
Dennis Hopper as Bowser and or Koopa King or whatever he was. God, it was horrible. I remember that movie coming out, just
Dino
thinking,
Haddon. They're trying to
right,
make. They're trying to turn the mushroom. They're trying to turn. They're trying to turn Mario's world into like Blade Runner or something. Yeah.
that's something. I When I was a kid and that came out, I remember watching it, just going, "This is not Mario." We all thought that when it came out. Like this is just wrong.
Did you have a Nintendo, Super Nintendo back in the day?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
had a Super Nintendo. I didn't have a regular Nintendo. Um, I do remember those days because the Nintendo, when it came out, was the hot item to get at Christmas for a couple years in a row, and it was like off the shelves. Like you could not find one. And I remember I begged and begged and begged for one year, and my father could not find one, so he brought me home a Sega Master System. This is
Ooh,
the one before Genesis. So I had that 8-bit gaming system. The only thing that's kind of famous on that gaming system is Outrun.
Outrun. Okay, I don't think I've
Yeah,
ever heard that one.
yeah, it was pretty lame but I was one of the only kids that had a Sega, so at least there was some different games that were on that system. Sega didn't even really become a contender until the Genesis came out.
Yeah, and then with especially with Sonic, especially with Sonic the Hedgehog
Sonic,
in
yeah.
'91, that really was able to really get put Nintendo in their place because Nintendo just saw Sega as well they're cute,
Well,
they're trying to compete with us.
and we don't want to turn this into a video game stream, but Sega had the gore. You had the R-rated games on Sega first, so that
Yeah,
was what turned a lot of us kids on, was the fact that you could, have more graphic games if you had a Genesis.
in Mortal Kombat's and yeah,
Mortal Kombat was the
exactly.
epitome of that, which
Hmm.
actually woke Nintendo up, and they realized their mistake and fixed it for Mortal Kombat 2.
But yeah, but I know I kind of derailed my own stream. But yeah, that was because this is that was just a few hours before doing this. So
I know, yeah, I caught it on the way home from work actually. Yeah.
yeah, cool. It was a lot of fun, and this is not even my last stream tonight. I'm actually going to be on Prophet of the Dragons channel. We're going to be watching the best show ever, Rings of Power, episode 7.
Oh God, I'm like 4 or 5 episodes behind now. I couldn't watch it anymore. I just stopped watching. Like I can't anymore. I'm so
They had
sorry for the ones of you that are still watching, because I know it's
they
painful.
had the battle episode last week, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
probably the one of the worst
Oh no.
episodes. It was probably one of the worst episodes ever. It's like it's everything wrong with Hollywood. Characters are stupid. They don't. There was no plan. There was no planning, and just like the layout of the battle itself. So it's just nothing made sense, and Bronwyn is the Bronwyn, the woman, with the woman, the apothecary, the woman in the village. She's a battle commander now. She went from
Ugh,
being an apothecary to a battle commander. So does that
oh
make sense?
God.
No.
No. Well, no.
And she
Basically, you're telling me
saves.
this isn't Helm's Deep.
They made it look like Helm's Deep, but then they left Helm's Deep and they went to a village. So imagine in Two Towers, they started off at Helm's Deep, but then they decided to leave, set a trap, leave, and then have the final stand in one of those villages that gets burned in like the very beginning of the movie. That's
uh,
what episode 6 was.
well, that sounds pretty much how that show was going when I left it.
Yeah, and then they all get captured by 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 the orcs and their
Hmm.
commander, who is Benjen Stark, played by Benjen Stark, actor from Game of Thrones. And then who saves them all at the end? Galadriel and all the Numenorians.
Oh, thank goodness for Glad Rapiel.
So like they have no sense of time in that show whatsoever. They have no sense of time. It's even worse than the Westeros Express.
Wow.
So
I'm just so impressed with the skills of Galadriel. I mean, she is just amazing.
she her
I haven't seen
the
such skills since
Morfred
Ray
Clark's
Skywalker.
Morfred Clark's portrayal of I cannot say she's Galadriel. She is another character. I would say she's the villain of the show. I,
Mm,
like everything she's done is villainous. Like she's not likable, and she's like threatening the villains, like torturing his people and whatever. It's crazy. It's just like I'm just like I. There's 2 more episodes. We'll watch it. Really prefer House of the Dragon, to be honest. House of the
yeah,
Dragon's
House of the
so
Dragon's been very entertaining compared to that garbage. Yeah,
yes. So that's
much
why I've
better.
been doing after shows for that instead of rings of something, because I actually want to enjoy what I watch and then talk
Right?
about it. Because if it's something that I don't enjoy, I will just tune myself off and I won't even pay attention.
That's where I got with it. And same thing with Andor. I tried watching a little bit of that and I fell asleep and then never went back to it. And I'm kind of glad because now people that were
I
originally
heard mixed
saying it was
things.
good, people are
Yeah,
they're starting to turn and be like, well, no, we were wrong. It's lame. It's boring. It's and I was like, well, that's kind of the vibe I got from the get go that it was boring. So I don't know why everybody else kind of thought it was cool at first, but typical Disney, setting you up for failure.
well, I saw a show that came out a few months ago. It's called Kenobi, and that just
Mm,
there's a reason why I haven't watched Andor. I haven't been
oh,
eager to
Boba
watch
Fett was
Andor.
was even worse than that.
Well,
Boba.
Kenobi kind of ruined. Kenobi ruined. I really liked the character of Obi Wan. He was such a
Mm,
cool character in both the prequels and in the original trilogy.
mm,
But the show made him. They regressed him. They did regressed him
yeah,
for the sake of so they can give him a story arc. How
right.
about just take what we know about him in between and have him become the Obi Wan? Where he learns how to be stealthy and how he learns to be more stoic and wise. How about that instead of showing him break down and then have to come back up because of little kid Leia?
My feelings on the Obi-Wan series was I think it was the back 2 or 3 episodes had some good stuff in there. If they would have cut out the whole Leia storyline, just chopped it out completely, and just picked it up off of Obi-Wan and his flashbacks and stuff with Anakin, and just focused on those two guys and used those scenes when the two of them were on screen together, I think it would have been a decent Star Wars movie. Maybe comparable to Rogue One, um, if done right. But because they bloated it with the Leia storyline and added so much just garbage, including Riva, it killed it, completely killed it. Because the few times, like, I really enjoyed the flashback sequences of the two of them looking like they did from Clone Wars and the lingo they were talking smack and having a lightsaber duel. I enjoyed those parts for just a small second there. I
Yeah.
felt like I was watching Star Wars again.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it was here comes Riva, and I get totally just pulled out of it again.
I'm laughing when I shouldn't. Wade, the pilot that died because Riva threw a
Yeah, yeah.
like like a container at the X-wing or something.
Oh, she was just ridiculous. The whole character was just ridiculous. What a
Like I
shoehorn character.
I fundamentally disagree with the direction that they took that show in. Like honestly, he should never left. He should never went off world. He should never
True,
fought Vader. He
true,
should never even met Leia. Leia should have been like the
true.
whole Leia thing made no sense and didn't fit with the original movie.
Nope.
What I think they should have did with him was I think Luke should have been kidnapped or I think
Yes.
Luke should have been kidnapped by someone, either one of Jabba's rivals. I'm sure Jabba has rivals for power on Tatooine,
Hmm.
or someone like or some lackey family, maybe kind of like kind of like something out of like Fistful of Dollars or something. He's kidnapped by a
Yeah.
family, and the family's at war. but needs money. And then this is where Obi-Wan would come in, and he would be like, be the drifter. He would be silent. He would, and of course, while he's doing that, he'd be, recalling, like you said, you'd be recalling stuff with him and Anakin, his training with Anakin, him training Anakin, and the stuff
Yeah.
that he learned from Anakin, because I'm sure he learned quite a bit from his own, student as well.
Right.
And that would be how he meets Luke, and how Luke becomes acquainted with Old Ben, because we know
Yeah.
that Luke met Old Ben before the original Star Wars, but the
Mhm.
way he meets Obi-Wan in this Kenobi series was just downright creepy, and the same with the way
Oh
he was
yeah.
talking to Leia too. That was creepy as well.
Yeah. No,
So
I think kids are some of the hardest things to put in movies anyway, or shows, because you're either going to get an amazing performance out of a child, or just nothing at all,
yeah,
and it just doesn't land. And that's what happened with the Leia character. She just didn't land. They tried to make her too much like the Leia that we knew in New Hope, who was already 21 or whatever age. Um, and her lines reflected that Leia, but they're coming out of this 10-year-old, and it just doesn't make sense that a 10-year-old would be like the whole torture scene. Like a real 10-year-old girl would have been crying her eyes out at that point,
yeah.
having a mental breakdown if a bunch of bad guys with lightsabers are all in her face.
And
Stuff like
it
that. It
would have
was
been really upsetting to see too, like for an
Yes.
adult.
Right. So, when they make scenes like that and then water it down, it's like, well, who are you trying to impress here?
Yeah, you're not
If
impressing anybody. Just don't even
right.
bother.
Yeah. I mean, that scene could have been extremely disturbing, but they decided not to go there. But they still put it in anyways, and
Yeah.
so and stuff like that. It took me out of the show. It's just so yeah. But I was really excited to see Vader and Kenobi back on screen together again, but of course, it wasn't what I was expecting. And like I said, there's a few glimmers of cool stuff in there, but not enough to save the series by any means.
Yeah, and I mean they obviously copied Star Wars Rebels, because that's how Ahsoka beats Vader, or
Hmm.
beats Vader. She doesn't really beat him, but
Right.
she hits him. But in this case, Obi-Wan beats Vader, does the same thing, and then he just walks away. I'm like, what are
Yeah, I
you
know.
doing? Like, what is
Right.
this? So
Yeah.
not only did so that was dumb. And I mean, better YouTubers had pointed this out a long time ago when this first happened. And then the second thing was he lets Riva go. Like
Hmm.
even the Obi-Wan of Star Wars Rebels would not have, let someone who knew about Luke get
Oh,
away. I
definitely.
mean,
Oh,
look at Darth, like
definitely
him and
not.
Darth Maul. Like he had to kill Darth Maul,
Right.
because
Right.
Darth Maul knew what he was protecting, or figured out that Obi-Wan was protecting someone.
Hmm.
So, and that's why he ultimately fought him.
Hmm.
But he just lets but in this show, he just lets Riva go, and Riva knows all about Luke. She was about to kill Luke. It's
But Riva changed her ways at the end, so she's one for the good now. And I
yeah.
can't wait
So
for our Riva spin-off series coming next year.
season 2 of Kenobi or whatever. I don't like. It's just at this point, like I'm like, why should if they're gonna be if they don't care about continuity, like why should any of us care to watch?
Yep.
That's my logic right there. And that's why I
That's
haven't covered Star Wars. That's why I don't cover Star Wars on my channel, because it's just I like to cover things that have been made with a labor of love, like Cobra Kai, for instance, is a good
yes. Cobra Kai
example.
was amazing. Yeah.
And I mean, other shows, you have Better Call Saul, you have, I mean, the Orville was made with love, but with the last season was kind of, I mean, the last season was kind of on the nose in terms of its political leanings, obviously. Um, but it was a pretty good season. But but the thing is, I was disappointed with how they concluded one of the big arcs that they started in season 2, and it just concluded within a single episode with
Hmm.
just a solution that they just kind of pulled out of their asses.
Hmm.
So, and then they still haven't renewed it, and I'm not even certain that they're going to at this point. Um, but they kind of final episode kind of felt like a series finale.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm guessing you haven't watched the Orville.
Nope, I haven't gotten into that one. I was a big fan of The Walking Dead when that came out, and I've managed to muscle through all the way to the end of this. So they're doing the final season of that. Just started this last Sunday. And I'm curious to see how they're going to close it out. But I really enjoyed like the Terminal List. It was pretty good entertainment. If you haven't
Yeah,
seen that yet.
I only watched the first 4 episodes. I haven't even watched the rest. But whoa, I was like that first episode. You know what the first thing I thought of when I saw what happens at the end of the first episode without giving it away? It made me think of Gladiator. It
Mm,
made me think of. I'm not going to even say when in Gladiator, but it made me think of Gladiator, and my heart dropped when I saw that. I couldn't believe it.
yeah, yeah, it's crushing.
Yeah,
But it really tunes you into the show and gives you purpose, and it makes you really root for the guy. Another one that was pretty good was The Old Man, I believe it's called, with Jeff.
yeah. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard that's another good one. Mike Pacific
Yes,
414 has covered that. So, and I
very
know
well
my
done.
mom watched it on Hulu. So, yeah, that's another show I do need to check out.
Yeah, I was very entertained with that one as well. And then of course Cobra Kai, um, and then House of Dragon. So there's been some good stuff. You got to kind of dig for it, but it's out there. It's out there.
Now,
And then of course Dahmer. Dahmer was a slam dunk. That was just a very enjoyable series. If you can stomach that kind of show, you know.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like it's not meant to make you feel good. I mean, there were so
No,
many awkward points in the show. I mean, it was very violent, and it's like we said, it's not for everybody. If you're
it's an
not into
encapsulating story though. It really is.
it's yeah, and the thing is, like, and I know like people now are like one thing I did notice I was on Twitter, and people are like especially the type of people that are the more disagreeable, and I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Well, now
Hmm.
they're making fun of, they're mocking people that like true crime, like, oh, you true crime fans are a bunch of weirdos and you like to glorify serial killers. And I'm just like, oh, the same people that call everybody of this and of that,
Oh
um,
sure. They'll try to find anything they can find to try and categorize you in some kind of category because that's what they view themselves as people that are in checked boxes and normal. Well, I don't know if I call myself normal, but eh, more more normal people don't check boxes because we know each person's different and we don't each personality is different. So um, there's nothing worse than groupthink, and that's a lot of
yeah,
stuff we've
that's
been fighting against.
that's one thing I've never really been a fan of. Like even as a kid, because I was always like, there were so many times where I was picked on. There were so many times I was humiliated, and there were a lot of times where I felt like everybody was against me. So
Hmm.
whenever I saw people act in a mob mentality towards another person, I could never get into it. I could never be a part
Right.
of that because of my own experiences. And as much as I hated experiencing those things, I learned quite a bit. It's kind of shaped me into who I am. Is
Yeah.
shaped me into who I am today. So, um, but yeah, and of course, Nosferatu is saying I'm Nerporeal. I don't know who this Nerporeal guy is. He made his channel with Love News shows. I don't know who that is. He sounds like a weirdo. Who calls
Yeah.
themselves Nerporeal? Jeez.
Hmm.
But Nosferatu is always awesome. The chat's always awesome. Your chats are always awesome too. So,
I
so
got
you
some
got
real
like
characters in my chats, that's for sure.
yeah, yes, yeah. But yeah, like everybody, I did love the Dahmer show. I mean, there were points where I was kind of questioning whether the thing was true or anything, but it was very entertaining. Well, I shouldn't even say entertaining because that just sounds like I'm doing this for at the expense of people that actually suffered. So I'll say this was more of an educational thing for me, and just to learn more about the capabilities, or learn about the victims. And I was glad that they made that episode about that one guy. I think honestly they probably should have made more episodes, but the thing was that at the same time I didn't want to see him get killed.
Right.
That was the one thing I was hoping that they didn't show, and luckily they didn't, because that would have, I think my heart would have dropped if they would have showed Tony being killed by Dahmer.
Yeah.
So I mean, we see his
Tony.
body, and
Well, Tony was the hardest one to watch, even get involved with it, because, like I said earlier, um, Dahmer mostly went after kind of the man whores, and Tony
Yeah.
was actually one that was just looking for a relationship, quote unquote,
And
looking for
love.
love,
Yeah.
and that hurts more just for the fact that he was genuinely trying to get to know somebody and got killed for it instead of,
Yeah.
just being a hoe bag and going home with some stranger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, like I binged this, and like not a whole lot of shows will do that to me.
Mm,
Like especially shows of franchises I used to love. Like it's weird that a true crime show has done more to really interest me than like a lot of other shows. I
right.
felt the show was pretty fair in regards to, like, I mean, they did showcase the racial aspect of it, but they didn't they humanized Dahmer just enough, not
Hmm.
enough to, like, make us really, feel totally bad for him. Like we like it's hard to explain. Like enough to know that he's still a human, but just to showcase that he's still a monster. And
Hmm.
what's even more messed up is he knew it and he couldn't control it,
Right.
or he just knew himself too well. So my question for you, Sno Dub, before we end the stream is: Do you think um, do you think Dahmer was redeemed, kind of, by his conduct, especially after he was caught, compared to, like, Gacy and Bundy and all those other guys that put their victims through hell before they died, and
Mm,
told them about everything.
yeah, I do feel the fact that he was very cooperative once he got caught and did the best that he could to help the police find all the bodies or what was left of them, victims, so they could be, identified, so family could finally have peace in knowing where their family members disappeared to. Um,
Because he did something, like, one thing that other serial killers did not do that Dahmer did, and I mean, I'm not gonna go as far as to say it lessened the pain, but I think, well, but giving closure by, confirming that these people died, giving,
right.
in a sense, was a kindness, I think.
Yes, because it even shows it in the show how Gacy um,
He's like,
basically
"Kiss my
lied
ass."
to the very end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he
and
said, "Kiss
called
my
it some
ass." Those
kind
are
of
his last
setup.
words.
Right. Um,
I
and
shouldn't
then,
laugh, but it was terrible.
and if I remember right, Ted Bundy claimed innocence all the way to the end too. If I remember right. Um,
Yes.
so at least from that aspect, he was, like I said, helpful and helped them find the bodies and the victims and what was left of them. Um, but Kenny, was he redeemed? Well, no, because the
Well,
guy, anyway you slice it, he was disgusting
no.
and a
Yes.
monster. Um,
It's
and
okay. So
I'd
redeem
almost
was not a good word, but like he tried, like he knew he couldn't make amends. Like he
right.
says so. Like, what I did is unforgivable. But, like, I mean, he did as much as he could for the especially position he was in. So
And it kind of came full circle, like
yeah,
we were saying earlier, where he died basically the way he took out his first victim,
yeah,
because after that he drugged him. That his very first murder was somebody that he just flat out killed. No drugging, no planning, no none of that.
yeah.
So it's kind of ironic, but still poetic justice that that's how he was murdered. Um, Once again, when I think about this show, even though it's, like you said, a documentary kind of, but it really is horror done right. So if you're looking for something this Halloween season to really give you the creeps and get under your skin and get in your head, this is a show that did it well. Picked great actors, set the story up well, indulged in the areas that it needed to get you encapsulated with the characters involved, but didn't show too much to completely turn you off on it as well.
Yeah.
It held a nice balance, and like I said, it was very well done and horror done right. And nowadays, horror movies are few and far in between when they're really good like this.
Yeah,
So when I find something like this, I'll sing some praise about it because like I said, it's rare. It's very rare to find a good horror movie or series these days.
I agree. Um, and the thing was like, especially with there were so many other adaptations of like Bundy and Gacy and like the like Gacy for instance, like you had the guy that played Francis from Pee Wee's Adventure, Pee Wee's Grand Adventure as Gacy, and then you also had freaking Jeremy Renner play Dahmer in like in earlier movies. They made movies like that, and I was always too afraid to see them because I was like I did not want to see, you know, I just didn't want to see like things based on real people being killed certain ways. So I kind of took I felt the same way about this, but I took a chance and I watched it. I was like, okay, um, there was tension in that first episode, um, but I was able to get through it for the most part. Like there were points where I just literally got scared, and that's a good thing. So
I'd also like to point out Dempsey in your chat. Black Phone was good. Ethan Hawke did really well in that movie. There's some parts of it that were kind of cheesy, but for the most part, it was an enjoyable movie. I enjoyed it.
okay, I saw the trailer for Black Phone. I've never seen it. I think that's another Blumhouse
Hmm. It's not as good
movie.
as Dahmer by any means, but it's
No,
still decent. It's worth a spin.
you know what you know what, they put a horror spin. Remember that old show Fantasy Island?
Oh yeah,
They put a horror spin on. They made a movie and you thought it was a remake, but no, they put a horror spin on Fantasy Island. So instead of Ricardo
interesting.
Montalban being the good guy, or in this case Michael Pena, he's the bad guy. It's so I mean I've been meaning to see that too, but it's just
I'll
it's
check it out.
crazy the ideas that they're coming up with. And yeah, next week I'm gonna go see Halloween Ends. So
Oh nice, yeah. No, I'm looking forward to that. I think I might be covering that with Tom over on Midnight's Edge. We covered it last year with Halloween Kills. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. That's going to come out on Peacock again, I believe. So
oh okay.
yeah, so I'll be watching that for sure.
Yeah, I liked Halloween Kills. There were some things I feel that could have been done much better, but
Oh
I
yeah, of
like the
course.
movie, and I've heard everybody I've talked to like ever since they said no, Halloween Kills sucks, blah blah blah. I'm just like whatever.
Me and Tom enjoyed it. Tom Connors over at Midnight's
Yeah,
Edge. We didn't think it was that bad. And we're kind of in the minority.
I know. Same here. I mean,
Yeah,
I really liked what they did. I
had
did
some
the
great
hospital stuff. I
kills.
didn't really care for so much. I
Yeah,
thought that was bad, but all the Michael
right.
Myers stuff was great.
Yeah. I thought some of the
Brutal.
kills were excellent. You
The
know.
ending was something that people had a big issue with, though. Like they made Michael Myers just an unkillable guy again, just like he was in the earlier movies.
Well, it's Michael Myers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, would you bring Jason Voorhees back and then turn him into a pussy? No,
Mm.
he's Jason Voorhees. He's gonna have a machete and a hockey mask, and he's gonna do some damage. That's
He's gonna be possible to kill.
right.
So, yep.
Right. So I wouldn't expect anything less from a horror icon such as Michael.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's about it. So yeah, I liked it. I like Dahmer. You like Dahmer. I mean, it's once again, it's not for everybody. If you can get past the true crime aspect of it, I mean, I like that. Like it was pretty. Just the fact that it was a period piece was something that also really interested me. And the
Hmm.
props that you see especially when they go to they go to the grocery store and you see the old Chips Ahoy and the old packages, the old
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
like they got that down pretty well. So like if you like a good period piece, that's a 90s or late 80s, 90s, 70s, that's a great show to watch. So
Yep. Yep.
but
Very nostalgic.
it's not for everybody. So
Right. It's not like Stranger Things. You're not
no,
going to watch it for nostalgia.
nope. So Snow Dub, you want to plug your channel? Got anything fun going coming up?
Oh, well, you know what? I usually pull out a stupid puppet. I kind of spaced it off, but For anyone who knows me, I do crazy puppet shows called the Cotton Council every Saturday night, and I do just stuff at Sno Dub too sometimes too, and also got some great music. If you're into kind of a funky hip hop, come check me out, Sno Dub. That's the channel and that's the place. And yeah, thanks for having me on, brother. It was a lot of fun. I always love talking horror, especially when it's something that I enjoyed and I'm not like tearing it apart. Because usually, if I'm talking about anything anymore on YouTube, I'm usually tearing it apart because we're always kind of, going after the bad. But it's nice to kick back and highlight some good once in a while, even though it was a terrible premise of what the show's based on. It's very well done.
Yeah, I totally agree. Oh, Dahmer versus Mario. Oh my gosh, Mario would stomp on him though. So, but okay, cool. On my end, I mean, I've been doing a series of streams with with other content creators and fans. I call them serial horror chats, and we talk about various movies and whatnot that are or they're things that people really like. I love to have you. I love to do one with you, Sno Dub. If you're up for something, we could talk about it after the stream if you're interested. And that's what I've been doing. So the next one coming up is Child's Play. I'm gonna be doing that with Pacific 414 on Sunday afternoon. I think we're gonna try for 2 p.m. Central. So I
Are you
got
covering
that
the show or the movies?
the movie. It's just the
Oh,
first movie.
oh, okay. 'Cause the
So
show just started again too.
oh, we
Season
did
two, I
it.
believe. Yeah,
Okay.
or it's about to. I think.
All
Yeah.
right. I've heard mixed things about the show.
Uh, I didn't finish it. I watched the first few episodes. It had a little bit of woke in there that I wasn't enjoying very much. But it wasn't horrible either. I guess at least they brought Brad Dourif back to play Chucky instead of Mark Hamill. I thought that was a big mistake.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. Brad Dourif,
yeah.
like I'll be honest, Brad Dourif, anything he's in elevates it. He was in Lord of the
Right.
Rings, he elevated it. He was in Exorcist 3. Well, I haven't seen it, so I can't speak for it, but I want to see Exorcist 3. Um, he was in Star Trek Voyager. He was in a
Hmm.
few episodes where he played a homicidal Betazoid crewman. Elevated that.
He was in
Um,
Rob Zombie's Halloween as well.
was he?
Yep, as the sheriff,
Oh, he was the sheriff.
the dad sheriff of the daughter, who was also in the Halloween movies, part 4 and 5.
Oh,
But
Danielle
Danielle,
Harris.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
he played her dad, also the sheriff. But yeah, so yeah, Brad Dourif's around. He gets around.
Yeah, yeah. Brad Dourif's been a lot. So, but yeah, like I can't wait to do Child's Play. I have like a whole lot of stuff. I have a whole lot of streams lined up in my calendar. So, so I'll be
Staying
doing,
busy.
yeah, the Jaws is I'm be doing Jaws with Pips from the White Cloaks on Monday, um, Columbus Day, and then I think I don't even remember what's next. I'd have to look at my calendar, but I'm trying to cover a whole bunch of stuff. So.
Cool.
But yeah, that's what I'm doing. And of course, my current video project is my retrospective for Planet of the Apes, the original movie. And I've been editing that for like over a week now. And I need to really finish it. You really need to finish it so that people can enjoy it. And yeah. And of course, House of the Dragon after show on Sunday, right after the episode. We do an after show.
Nice.
So that's what's coming up with me. So yeah. So everybody, yeah, yeah, Sno Dub, thank you so much for coming on for a couple hours. This was a great chat. Like I didn't really even like put a lot of time into planning this. I just wrote like a few notes and of broad concepts of what to talk about. But this was a great back and forth conversation. It's
Oh
like,
yeah. Well, I knew we were going to dive into not just Dahmer, but other serial killers and stuff like that too. So I felt like I had enough knowledge packed along with me to help you out on this show for sure. Yeah, it's good times.
all right, but yeah, once again, thank you. And
No
chat,
problem.
thank you guys for showing up. I wasn't sure how many people were going to show up because I don't ever cover true crime. So this was like one of the earliest things that first things that true crime I've ever done. So once again, I thank you for that. And like everybody, like everyone else says, stay nerporial. May the wings of nerporials carry you to the next stream of whatever. So But other than that, everybody take care. And if you are still up, 2 hours, I'll be on Steve's channel, Prophet of the Dragon. We're gonna be watching Greatest Show Ever. And other than
Oh
that,
God, I think I'm going to bed.
other than that, everybody take care and have a good night.
Tuck and roll.